Welcome to the TRXL podcast. I'm Evan TRXL, and in this episode, I welcome Kyle Morck. Kyle is the VP of Strategy at Reynolds and Myers, which is a marketing agency that works with small teams in complex industries, AEC among them. His background as both a programmer and a strategist gives him a unique lens into how firms can better connect with their audiences, grow their reputation, and ultimately win better work. In this episode, we challenge the prevailing norms of marketing in the AEC industry. If you've ever felt like your firm's social media presence is just an internal echo chamber, or that your website traffic stats don't reflect real business impact, you're not alone, and Kyle explains why. We dissect the over-reliance on vanity metrics like impressions and likes, the false confidence that those create, and why they often distract from what actually moves the needle in a relationship-based business. But this isn't just about company branding. It's about personal branding too. We explore how the same principles of communication, storytelling, and value creation apply to individuals within firms. Kyle and I unpack how to show up authentically, how to be known for something, and how to remain top of mind, whether you're an emerging professional, a leader in waiting, or someone looking to attract the right clients or team members. A key theme from this conversation is the danger of misaligned marketing, both at the firm and personal levels. If we're measuring the wrong things, we're likely telling the wrong story to the wrong people in the wrong way. And whether you're in a marketing role, leadership, or just looking to grow your own visibility and career trajectory inside of a firm, this conversation offers a wake-up call and a way forward. As always, there's a lot more in the show notes at trxl.co or in your podcast app if you're a paid supporter. So check those out to go deeper. And you can also help support the podcast by sharing this episode with your network and joining the discussion on my LinkedIn posts or on YouTube. This one lit a fire under me for sure. I love talking to Kyle, and I hope it does the same for you. So now, without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Kyle Morck. Kyle Morck, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you. Great to see you again. It's been a little while since we've seen each other in person.
Yeah, it's been really great to see you, reconnect, and thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to host somebody to talk about the bastardization of marketing in AEC. Is that the right title? I think we're going for clickbait here, but it's not untrue, right?
Yeah, because it's the bastardization of marketing kind of across all levels, but it definitely hits AEC hard.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. But before we do, let's get an idea of who you are and what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I'm the VP of Strategy for a marketing agency called Reynolds and Myers. And we work with generally smaller marketing teams in what we call complex industries. So any type of industry where you've got long sales cycles, where you're, based on relationships, selling through distribution, anything like that. But we do a lot of work in the construction space, building products, AEC firms, all of those just industries where you can't really just make an ad and expect people to show up.
Yeah, and we had a conversation on another podcast previously when I was working at Tech, the startup, and that's kind of where our conversations about this entire topic started. And then
Right.
As we recently reconnected, I think this is something that's really interesting to me because I think a lot of times in AEC, marketing really just means responding to RFPs, and it's a really reactive situation instead of a proactive situation. You know, there's obviously social media component to marketing for firms, but I feel like a lot of times it's just kind of like patting ourselves on the backs kind of things. Here's the awards we won. Here's the promotions that have happened inside the business, but it's not really positioning themselves. I mean, I take that back. On some level, it is. It's like, here's our people, and here we are celebrating their, ascendance inside the firm, and on one level, because this is a relationship business, it's great to know who the people are. And at the same time, quote unquote thought leadership kind of that toxic term that I hate so much, is it's like a thing that people participate in to generate SEO, to have, and I think this kind of underlies our conversation today, which is like how do you say that? It's like the metricization of
Right.
everything, right? It's like, how can we measure how many people are coming to our websites? How many post impressions are we getting on these social media posts? And I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts around that whole topic.
Yeah, because what I would say part of the problem is that you've got kind of that RFP side of the business, which takes up a lot of time. And, there's plenty of people that might be a marketing role within an AEC firm that's all they do is
Sure.
The proposal side.
Right.
But what you find is that, when you want to start growing, when you're trying to kind of go out and actively find some business and get a little bit proactive about it, what you turn to is a lot, social media or content or ads or anything like that. And that's the place that I think most AEC firms are really looking at the wrong kind of thing, that they're focused on the metrics and a lot of those vanity metrics and not really a full understanding of like the way in which marketing could really move the needle for their firm.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, that seems like an interesting position like a statement to make, kind of the initial part of the argument here. And so I'm curious why that's wrong to do in this kind, like, because the context matters, right? I mean, you said it earlier.
Right.
It's like in a relationship type of a business. So can you go deeper into that?
Yeah. So a big part of what it comes down to is that, okay, so if you're within a firm and, this applies to even if you're a sole practitioner on where you focus your time, but where you see this the most is you've got a firm that hires one or two marketing folk, that they have kind of a small marketing department. And what you get into a situation of is that you want to start measuring ROI of it. Okay, we're making this investment in definitely the people side of it and perhaps on a budget side of it. So then you want to start saying, okay, how do we measure the success of this? But then you start looking at metrics like how much traffic are we driving to our website? How much, how many likes are we getting on these social media posts? Are we getting people to our social media page? And you'll see a ton, like one of the most common things you see when you start kind of investing in like LinkedIn posting or something like that is that if you see the people that are liking the post, it's almost entirely like people from the firm.
It's like an echo chamber, for sure.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Because there's like this internal pressure, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's just like, oh, I have to do this because I have to basically show my loyalty for the, the firm.
And I don't even think the people that are liking about it are really thinking about it. It's just they see it show up in their feed, they like it. But if you're the person doing the social media posting and you're like, oh, we got 20 likes on this or whatever, and 18 of them are from the firm.
Right.
And what it really comes down to is that the metrics that you start to use to kind of try to prove your worth are actually very misaligned from the things that can actually like drive business for a firm. Because that's like the chances of somebody like seeing a LinkedIn post about Flag Day or whatever on your LinkedIn page and then that somehow driving them to, choose to work with you is very slim.
Well, maybe let's take a step back and just define marketing. I mean, because my understanding is, and I'm gonna throw this out there, and you can slap it down, or you can say yes. But the idea of marketing to me is awareness, and marketing. There's a lot of different ways to accomplish brand awareness in the marketplace so that when it's time to make a decision, you are in the short list, right? Like to me, that's kind of the overall goal, because, and so measuring ROI, I mean, I think we'll get there. So eventually, but measuring ROI on exposure is a really difficult thing to do, right? So take it from there.
Yes. So, and I think that brings up an interesting place, like particularly in AEC firms, because the difference between like marketing and sales is becoming really muddied today. That traditionally the idea has been that marketing is like a one to many, expression where sales is one-to-one. So marketing is going out wide and sales is reaching out to individuals. But especially for like a services firm, in my work for new business development for the agency, I would consider almost everything I do marketing, but I'm almost always reaching out individually to people to kind of do that work. But I'm not trying to make the sale. I'm trying to build relationships and get people to know about us and understand what we are, who we are, all of that. So I think that that's really muddied. But then in a lot of AEC firms, your marketing folk might be business development people that really are on both sides of that. So that's the first thing, is that I think in terms of like, I wouldn't say that one-to-many definition is really even right these days. But what I would say in terms of marketing, that it is about getting into that consideration set and then staying top of mind, that when you are, have a project where you're looking for an AEC firm, it obviously depends on who your kind of audience is for your firm, but a lot of times it might be that they need a project done, once every 5 years or something like that. So when that trigger comes, what you're really trying to do is that when they start making that short list of who might they be reaching out to for this project, it's that you're at the top of that list. And that, first you need to know about them, but then you also need to think of them as, the type of firm that it manages these types of projects that align with the type of people that you want to work with, and that you remember them when the time comes. Because it's not really something that, like, an AEC firm has no real ability to, like, produce demand. Like, they can't convince somebody that they suddenly should be doing a project that
you need
they
to
weren't
spend
planning to do
$50 million
before.
right now.
Yeah. So you need to make sure that you're still top of mind when that time comes that they do need somebody.
I think there's an interesting parallel here, and maybe this is a rabbit hole, but I think there may be people listening who are like, "Oh, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not on the overhead side of the business. I'm in the doer side of the business." And I want to draw a parallel that I think these principles apply to people too, inside of corporate environments, because there's this evolution on a career trajectory that people go through, and I think marketing, personal marketing, has a lot to do with that. And I think you could swap out the word communication, storytelling, maybe not swap out the word, but like those are the analogies that I think of when I think of marketing. Personal marketing, how do you be the top of mind person when it's time for promotions? How do you become the top of mind person when it becomes, who do we select to be on the A team for this project? Things like that. And so I think these principles still apply on the personal level as they, to the 1, 2, 10, 50, 100, whatever person firm as well, because like this is a long game. And just like projects are long, right? Projects take years, and so does your career development. And it's not always the most transparent process either, right? And so there's a lot of positioning that happens naturally in capitalism, right? And in corporate America. So I just wanted to throw that out there now, because I think it's important to kind of think about this from your own level as well. Like, it applies to me as a podcast host too. Like, how do I get on someone's short list of podcasts that people listen to, for example, right? So how do you, Kyle, get Reynolds and Myers on the short list of people who are looking for marketing consultants or for, the services that you offer? It's very similar in concept, the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, that so much of the work that we do, it's not just about kind of the quality of the work. It's also about like the context in which you do that work and making sure that that work is, remembered in the right ways when that time comes up. So it definitely applies to, the firm side and the personnel side. And I'd also say, like, from the firm side, even when it comes to things like recruitment, that these are all really important pieces, that if you're having trouble finding folks for your construction firm, that this type of work is the same thing that brings people in.
I have my hand on my forehead because you just reminded me of like one of my pet peeves that I see. I see this on LinkedIn all the time when people are quote unquote recruiting, or they have openings. And seriously, the only text is, and I get it, AEC professionals are short on time, right? Let's be blunt about that. But it just says, know anyone interested? And then there's a link to their job opening. Mm-hmm. And like, to me, again, this goes back into positioning and marketing and recruiting. And how do you evolve as a business? How do you attract the kind of people that you need to take your company to the next level? And this was a project. I mean, that pet peeve drove me to really go inside and really think about how to deal with that and be an example of, it's so easy to stand out. How can you stand out in a sea of know anybody interested? Or it's like, are you interested? It's like, who's interested in what? What do you stand for? I don't get any information from that kind of a post. And then what? I have to click on a link, go look at a copy of a copy of a copy of a job that, a job posting, right? Which is, they all are very similar. Let's just say it that way, right? So it's like, okay, I'm not really going to get a sense of the company in here. Okay, yep, we want someone who works hard and thinks big and goes fast and knows the tool. It's like, I've read this job posting a million times, right? So, right. And then on top of that, know anybody interested? Interested in what? Like again, like I'll just come back to, who are you? And when I was running digital practice at our firm, I took recruitment personally. I wasn't going to leave it up to the HR department, who doesn't know anything about the roles that I need to fill, and went deep into, becoming a YouTuber. Like, that's where this started for me, was I'm going to promote what we're doing and who we are and who we want to be. Like right. Not even saying this is who we are today. No, this is who we want to be in the future. And painting that picture and telling that story so that people could then opt in to wanting to be a part of it. And I think that, again, kind of applying this at different levels, like this can apply to you on a personal level, it could apply to a team, it could apply to a corporation, it could apply to a marketing department who is trying to attract future customers, right? It's like right. You need to get good at communication and storytelling, but also be authentic about it and say, like, here's who we want to be. Do you want to opt in on this ride with us and help us build that future? And that's kind of, it's interesting that you, like, all of that just kind of flashed back at me as you were talking about what you were just talking about. It's like, I just went down this my rabbit hole. So I'm gonna just throw it out there and leave it there and see what you've got to come back.
Yeah, that's you hit on something which I think is really key, is that you talked a little bit about kind of the point of view. And I think that is one of the most important parts about positioning for anything, is being able to have a unique point of view and express that in a way that gets people excited about joining you on whatever that might be. And I think the reason that so many firms struggle with this side of things that is, harder to measure and all of that, is that it's something that takes time and kind of a commitment to and
testing.
Commitment to building and testing and talking to people to see what really connects on that side of things. So when you add that in with it being hard to measure, then you find yourself kind of looking for the easy button or the silver bullet in a lot of ways, that it's, we need business now, not 6 months from now. But all you're really doing when you're putting that work off is delaying, that 6 months that it takes to get everything working well. And the other thing that I would really add to that side when it comes to the point of view is that not only can that help you in attracting like outsiders to you, but it also helps you in kind of everything that you're creating,
Hmm.
that you're putting outside, that having that kind of clarity of focus in something that you internally can really get behind, it just makes like your day-to-day life so much easier in terms of like prioritization and picking what you're trying to do.
You're now kind of stirring up these thoughts of mine around marketing and wordsmithing and, the things going under the microscope before they go
Hmm.
out. And so I'm curious from your point of view, what about that polishing aspect of marketing materials before they go out versus working in public as kind of another end of that spectrum? Where do you fall in there?
Yeah, I think in general that we're way too precious about our marketing material. Like, I think we get in our head this idea that we've got like one chance, that we're going to put something out in the world and
Mm.
everybody's going to see it right away. And then they're going to make their judgment on that in that second. But the reality is that most people are paying no attention to anything you're doing at
Yeah.
any point in time.
Thank you
And
for
even if
saying that.
they
Totally.
and even if they are paying attention, like most people are usually pretty like open-minded about things, that if
Hmm.
they see one piece from you that doesn't connect and then 6 months later you produce something that does connect, they're going to be paying a lot more attention to that thing that connected than the thing that didn't connect in the past. So yeah, I think that that's a big issue within marketing in general, is that we uh, do a lot of kind of perfectionism
Hmm.
that, like, it's very common to have clients that want to spend like months, going back and forth internally making adjustments to things before they ever have a customer actually looking at the piece. Where the more you can get it in front of customers, get feedback, iterate, the better off you're going to be.
There's an architect that I talked to who I used to have a prolific social media posting, and it was all done by him and maybe his partner. But they had a growing staff, and I saw him in person once. Anthony Laney is his name, and
Mhm.
Laney LA is the name of their firm, and so people might recognize that. But he super nice, super down to earth guy, very very polished looking social media presence. But I talked to him once about it, and he said one of my rules is that it has to be fast, and if it's not going to be fast, I will not do it. Right? He recognized kind of the value of his time, number one, but also that it didn't have to be absolutely pixel perfect before he put it out. Because, and this kind of ties into one of my kind of guiding principles, which is it's about the big picture. It's about the whole
Right.
story. It's not about the little pieces along the way. They may tie together in weird ways or whatever over time, but it's like the body of work. It's not the specific piece of work. It's like this podcast is not necessarily about a particular guest or a particular episode. It's about the entire body of work and the connections that we can draw between those episodes, and what we that's to me an interesting, like that's what design is, right? It's like connecting dots that were not previously connected, but also just kind of weaving a story, a new way of understanding because of a different perspective. And to me, that's something to go back to. And I thought that was so insightful of Anthony to say, like, it has to be fast. And because this idea of polish, you can polish forever, right?
Yeah.
Before you decide to put something out. And by the time you put it out, it's like, okay, well, number one, the investment's huge into getting this done. It feels like a slog, right? To get these pieces put out, because they have to be run through 4 different committees and this much red tape, and this person who does copy, and their desk is stacked with papers to do copy on, and so they might get to yours someday. Versus kind of this speedy mentality of just get it
Yeah.
out, tell the story. It's like you said, it's not precious. It's just a little piece of the whole puzzle. And I think that there's some value in that mindset. And I think that also applies kind of, again, going back to kind of personal trajectories inside of firms. If you have to be vocal, you have to be putting stuff out, you have to be constantly communicating what you do, what you're working on, what you did, what you're going to do. And does it have to be polished? No, it could be in an email. It could literally be 3 bullet points in an email every week to somebody. But it's like this constant trickle of information, and that stream builds into a river, right? Like that overall, it's like you're making an impact. It's like over time, right? And so that to me is a very important aspect to communication.
Yeah, like that's exactly right. And the thing that I would want to add is that it's not about quantity of it. And I know that's not the point you were trying to make, that it's not about like just posting something for posting's sake or anything like that. It
doesn't need to be on a schedule, right?
Yeah, it's all about having something to say and just saying it. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be polished, but just having something to talk about and making sure that people are seeing it is what really matters there. And you definitely hit on it with like it's just one piece of a puzzle. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to talking about the metrics and all of those that so many people are missing, is that anything that you can measure is going to at most be such a small part of the overall picture of what actually like led to that business for you. And what you're in danger of is really over-indexing on those measurable parts. That the practice I love to run clients through is just like thinking of yourself in terms of like how you actually buy something. So if you sit down and think about like a semi-major few $100 purchase that you make, that you spend some time thinking about and really try to sit down and understand, like, when did I first hear about that brand the very first time? What got me thinking about purchasing this in the first place? How long did I spend thinking about that? What type of research did I do while I was thinking about that? And then, what was that trigger that finally made that happen? And what do you see? So if you think about that from like the e-commerce side, which is the easiest way to look at it, is that you have a lot of people in e-commerce looking at their metrics and being like, oh, that person clicked on an ad and then bought our shoes or whatever, so this ad is working really well. But they're missing out on, the brand's 30 years old and they've done all of that work to get them so that they know about it in the first place, that they were already on their phone researching shoes and decided to buy 3 weeks ago. They researched your shoes because they heard about it from word of mouth from one of their friends. And then, that ad might have just been the thing that was the trigger when they were at their computer at the right time to make that purchase. But then if you say, oh, look at how well these ads are doing, then you stop doing all of the other things that actually led up to that sale and start over-indexing on that one piece.
Interesting. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm curious from your point of view, like what is an effective way of getting your story out? Do you feel like the most effective way right now? What do you feel like that is? So, like, and I'll just throw this out there, and maybe this resonates with you and maybe not. But for a long time in AEC, when I was running digital practice, the term that was being thrown about quite frivolously was like, you're a technology company. You just happen to do architecture. And it was kind of like this framing of where we're headed and how you should think about the approach, and especially as it comes to like delivering projects digitally, right? And one thing that I used to say was we call this digital practice, and someday it's just going to be called practice. It was already just the way we did things, but we had to call it something for people to pay attention. And then once we got through whatever we were going through, eventually we could say, yeah, just this is now the way it is. But when it comes to that analogy and media, I actually kind of feel like now it is like everybody's a media company. Every company's a media company. You happen to provide whatever service or products as well. I'm curious if that resonates with you. Like, do you have to be doing this kind of a thing to get noticed, to get that exposure? Like just kind of give us an idea of the current situation that's going on out there.
So what I would say is the most important thing is the very first thing you have to do is have a really clear understanding of who your audience actually is. And I think that's actually particularly hard. Like, in the architecture side of AEC firms that there's so many different job descriptions that might be, the ones looking for an architect. There's so many different kind of places that, kind of stages that someone can be in when they're doing that search. So where I'd usually start if you were trying to really think of this from scratch is trying to understand who have been your best clients in the past, what type of people are they from both a job title perspective or whatever that might be, but also from a psychographic perspective of what type of people are they, that what was it about you that attracted them to you.
And how do you find that out? Do you just go back and ask them? What, or is it obviously you're doing some kind of an analysis here.
Yeah, customer interviews is so powerful, and it's not just about I'm talking from the perspective of past clients you've had, but it's also just anybody that might be a potential client in some way, shape, or form. And that's part of what I talk about with the marketing and sales side becoming really blurred, is that some of the best marketing you can do is reaching out to potential customers to interview them, to ask them what draws you to a firm, what's your thought process when you're doing that. And that gives you a good opportunity to kind of start building out that relationship with potential customers. But a lot of marketing folk are really hesitant to kind of have that one-on-one contact with clients, whether it's current, former, or potential clients.
Is that because of the vulnerability aspect of it, or what do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that it's the vulnerability. I think that depending on your culture, if you have any real type of sales culture, you can feel like you're stepping on feet as a marketer, that somebody else owns that relationship and you can't get in the between that. But I also just think that it's something that is time consuming and scary in a lot of ways, that it's, it takes time to set up those interviews, and there's, the vulnerability of reaching out and potentially people are going to say no to you.
Don't want to hear no.
And I think that's a hard part of it.
Sure.
But it's very worth the time.
Yeah.
And so going back to your original question around the what's working, or what I would recommend these days. So once you understand who your audience really is, and there's a huge importance to niching as well, and this is part of the marketing side of things doesn't work independently from the business strategy side of things, of understanding, where your market is, where you're making the best profit opportunity, what have you. So working side by side with your leadership to make sure that you've got kind of a perspective on who you should be going after. But that niching side is really important, even if you're a super large firm that can take on a bunch of different types of projects and a bunch of different verticals. You still, for your marketing, it's really useful to at least pick a focus for the next quarter or something like that. Pick a part of your practice to build up and build that point of view in, whether it's the biggest opportunity part for you or what have you. And then it's really about just understanding where are the people in that audience spending their time, and what's a message, value, anything that I could provide to them in that space.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, that can look like just interesting content on LinkedIn. If your audience spends a lot of their time on LinkedIn, then, you could get interesting content with an interesting point of view in front of them.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then you need to be thinking in other ways. And that's where it comes back to, those customer interviews, to really understand where they spend their time, where they're finding new ideas, all of that.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to tell you about something that I think is pretty great and you might be interested in it. And that is my exclusive newsletter available only to paid members of TRXL Plus that I call Leadership Edge. If you're looking to stay ahead of the curve in architecture and technology, Leadership Edge delivers insights that you won't find anywhere else. Why? Well, because they are my deep dives into the podcast conversations, just like the one that you're listening to in this episode, to give you an edge on the industry. Each edition of the newsletter provides key insights for forward-thinking leaders seeking innovation in AEC who are short on time, who isn't, offering the context of each conversation without the need to listen to the full episode. I've actually designed them, though, to keep you updated, spark your interest, and encourage you to tune into the full episodes if those ideas resonate. And the best part is that they are packed with actionable takeaways to help you navigate the future of practice. By becoming a paid supporter, you get Leadership Edge delivered right to your inbox, and it's a direct way to support my podcast while getting exclusive, valuable content to sharpen your leadership mindset. You can join today at trxl.co and start receiving my Leadership Edge newsletters. Just click the subscribe button either in the upper right-hand corner or at the bottom of the page, or you can visit the link that I put in the show notes. Thanks. Now back to the conversation. How do you define where your audience is? Like, how do you go about figuring that out? Is it where you're getting engagement because you're putting stuff out there? Or if you're not putting stuff out there, then where's it coming from?
Yeah. So that's another side of that, like, hard to measure piece is that, if you really think about, so like I've hired architects in the past. In my past life, I led some nonprofits. So we did built buildings that hired architects for. And if you think about like the way that actually comes about, like the way you find them, there's the mixture of those little banners that you put up on construction sites, like
just driving
those are
by.
Actually really meaningful in terms of just that very first, like, what is this? Yeah. That if you see those driving by enough times,
can I tell you how many times I've seen those signs and the font is so small I can't even read it, right? And so it's like the 55 mile an hour test too, right? It's like driving by, not standing there, not right up against the fence reading it, but driving by at 55 miles an hour. Can I make it out? Can I remember the 3-letter name of that firm, whatever it happens to be?
Yeah, and that's, so the visual design of that, like if it's just intriguing enough that somebody that might be hiring a firm one day remembers to Google that, that can be enough in that sense. But then once you're doing that, okay, so maybe you go to their website, and then when you're on their website, is there something there that is intriguing enough that it's like, I'm going to keep these people in mind, or maybe I'll follow them,
make an
on
impression,
some type of social, and that's where it comes back to that point of view, all of those things, that it's like, is there something that stands out enough to kind of remember you?
Right.
And then, so maybe you've got like email is super powerful, but a lot of people do email really wrong because they focus their email entirely on like, how can I tell everybody about us?
Yes.
Instead of being like, how could I provide value to potential clients, right? So maybe you do that Google, but then there's like, hey, we do a monthly newsletter that's focused very much on this specific, niche idea. Like, I don't know, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're got a big focus on refrigeration, there's people that are going to go crazy about your refrigeration news, there's something for everybody in that space, but they're much less likely to kind of engage if it's just, here's, some awards we got or something like that. You need to find a way to provide them value is the biggest piece there.
So you have to do that homework part of it, right? Which is kind of have the content there waiting for, and I've even heard, depending on who that audience is, hopefully you have like different landing pages that really hone in on who that is, if you can get that specific about it. Maybe your business doesn't allow for that, but that to me is one of the things that the affordances are there to be able to do that. It's up to you to execute on that. It's like starting a new podcast. You don't publish it out there with one episode, because it's like, well, what else is there? I'm ready to binge this you have to have stuff there waiting for people before you even promote it in the very beginning, or else it's like, what are the chances? Like, most podcasts don't go beyond 10 episodes anyway, right?
Yeah.
So what are the chances that they're going to stick around if you've only got that one thing to listen to? I mean, a lot of people will go to a podcast listing and see how many episodes there are to see if it even has staying power, to see if it's worth their time, because subscribing to something is an investment, right? It's the same as following somebody on social media. If people, you're hoping people will follow you or your brand on social media, it's like, you've got to have stuff there, or else like the chances are they're just going to walk away before clicking that button to follow you, right?
Yeah, and so many people focus, like, if they content is obviously something that's been around for a long time, that I'm sure most AEC firms have a blog or something that they're putting together, or have toyed around with, like an ebook or something like that. The problem most people make is that it's so generic that they're focused on like SEO or something with their blog content, or it's just, 5 cool ideas for buildings or whatever that their ebook is. That there's not really anything that like connects with like, I'm the type of person that would work with your firm, that it's like, you're speaking to me. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong around this, is that, having a ebook that brought in 5 new clients would be an amazing like return on investment for the vast majority of firms. Mm-hmm. And most people are looking at kind of how many downloads is that getting or whatever.
Yeah.
But it would be way better, if you had 10 downloads and 5 of them converted because it was made so specifically for them, versus 10,000 downloads and nobody cares about it.
And can I like lower the stakes a little bit? I feel like obviously that would be amazing, right? If you got commissions based on ebooks. Yep. But I think it's like, okay, well, what next? To me, it's like there's a progression, and it's like that. For me to sign up for your mailing list, and then those people click onto the next thing to download the ebook, and then they click on the next thing to book a call. I don't know, maybe that's too much, but you have to kind of think multiple steps down the sales funnel, as it were, right? Because that's what actually qualifies that ROI. Right. It's like you get because going from ebook to commission is a huge step. So how can we reduce that friction? I mean, I know you were using that as an example, right? But it's like, I'm just saying, like, these are the things that people need to be thinking about. How can we reduce the friction to actually see what's working? Because downloads of ebooks, who knows? Who cares? Like, what did you do with it? Like,
and that's exactly the point, is because, like, none of this is direct response marketing.
Right.
Like, nobody's ever going to download something and then, call you because they have a project that next day.
Right.
Well, maybe they would, but then they're already so far like close to the project that they were probably just, looking at it already after making the choice to reach out to you. And that's another side of, where people start to get misled by the metrics on those sorts of things. But it is I personally don't believe in the idea of the marketing funnel, because that makes it seem like it's like a linear process, that it's the first thing you do is this, then you do this, then you do this.
Okay.
But the like kind of funnel I like is it's something called the awareness funnel, that kind of every customer or client or potential client is in a place where they're like, have some type of relationship with you at that moment in time. And the goal is to kind of move them to the next stage of that. So in the awareness funnel, it's like from unaware to problem aware to solution aware to product aware to customer, essentially. Mm-hmm. But what's important there is about just kind of understanding that almost nobody that your marketing is going to reach is in kind of the buyer ready stage.
Yeah.
So everything that you're doing is just trying to build up that trust, build up that relationship with you, keep them interested in what you're doing. So when you're looking at something like an ebook, that can be very powerful tool for getting across your point of view. And if they then went on to join your newsletter or whatever, that's great. But in reality, it's just like that engagement with that ebook is the thing at that moment. And that's all that really matters, is that category that they're building in their mind around you. And then the hope is that they'll see something else from you at some other point in time, because you're staying in kind of the world that they live in, online or in the real world or whatever. It reminds them of kind of that point of view that they have around your firm. And then maybe there's another piece that they engage with there, an event, any YouTube video, any of those things, that it's not about trying to like move them into this funnel and move them down. It is very much just about like having as many touches as you can that keeps them building up that trust and relationship with you and just kind of affinity towards you, so that when they eventually do need your services, you're the one that they think of.
You remind me of two things. I'm going to try really hard to remember the two things when I finally get to the second one. So hopefully that happens. But the first one is, there's a book I read, marketing genius Seth Godin. Right? I'm sure you're aware of Seth Godin, but he wrote a book called, he's written a lot of books, right? But the one I'm thinking of right now is called We're All Weird. And it's really just kind of about the magic of the internet and people being able to find their tribe out there.
Right.
And like to your point of niching down, right? It's like people are very, like firms want to offer lots of project types, lots of verticals. Like we do all these, we can do any building, we could do anything for anybody. And then they water themselves down so much by being everything to everybody that they don't know who they are, right? It's like, well, we do it all. We'll take whatever. And so then you have to start taking all these low morale projects, I call them, right? Just to feed the beast. And so then you get unhappy staff, and they end up leaving, and a lot of turnover because you've got to do the crappy projects. And then there's the other types of firms out there who like get weird, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory term at all. I mean, it's just like, well, we do this really specific thing, or we do these kinds of projects for these kinds of people, and they're really specific about those kinds of things. And that to me is what I'm talking about here. It's like, so that because you're creating an alignment between your audience, you're being really specific about who your audience is and who you are, because these are the kinds of projects you want to do. And this is something that I forgot to bring up earlier, but I wanted to, which is like when you're looking at who your audience is, knowing your audience, you said, right? Like you want to know who the best part of your audience is. You want to know you want to identify exactly who it is you want to work with and what the kind of projects are that you want to do. Because if you need to focus on that so that those become the reality, because if you don't, you're just going to get distracted with all the other crap that comes across because you have to do it right now because you've got to feed the beast, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's two ideas that I recommend that everybody has, and definitely marketers, but I think this is something that applies to business as a whole. And the first one is your ambition. And what's important about this, so like lots of companies will have like their mission or vision or values or whatever, but your ambition is really about like, what type of company do you actually want to build? And this is like the one place that I say this is about looking internal and not about looking at your customers. It's like, in your firm,
know yourself.
How many people
first.
do you want to have? What type of margins are you trying to make? What type of work do you want to do? And like the example I use is if you're building like a consumer package good of some sort, like let's say you're making purses. There's a big difference between I want this purse to be available at every Walmart in the country versus I want to have a boutique store in, the 4 major cities that sell the purse. And like both of those can be very successful, but the type of work that you're doing to get to that point looks very different. And it's very much about like the lifestyle you want to live, the type of work you want to do, the type of creative, all of those things.
Yeah.
But it should be a pretty like pass fail thing of like we either have accomplished this or we haven't. That it's you should be able to just know in 5 years' time if you were successful doing that without it being kind of up for chance. But once you know that, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, well, how do you recommend people position themselves? Is it really clearly like we do this in this way for these kinds of people? Is it like super specific, like a one sentence? I mean, it's not even an elevator pitch, right? Like to me, that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like when somebody goes to your site, we build websites for architects. It's like something like that's plain speak and that simple, but it's also like, here's who we serve. And you could obviously add a little bit to that, but you can't go too much because then you'll lose people if it goes beyond 6 seconds
exactly.
of reading.
There's a framework that I believe this is somebody named Stephen Wessner talks about that I would also recommend anyone that's running firms. There's so much good content on the marketing and digital agency side of things that's like completely relevant to running an AEC firm too. So there's lots of good information there. Stephen Wessner is somebody that's a big person on kind of the biz dev side of agencies.
Okay.
But he calls it the XYZ framework, which is exactly what you said, plus one. It's we do this for this audience to help them
accomplish whatever,
Okay. So that's a key part there, is that it's not just about the work you do, it's the kind of outcome that you help them get. And having those three pieces together really helps people just kind of see, is this for me or not? And that's actually a really useful thing to have people kind of self-selecting in that way.
Yeah, you're reminding me of like visual. I mean, probably it accounts for many senses, right? But most of the work that's going on is you're filtering out stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so for you to be able to be that precise with your messaging then allows people who are not the right fit to filter it out. Right.
Yep.
But for those who it is the right fit to hone in and say, oh, like it's so specific. It really helps say, because you can't be everything to everybody. Like, let's just say that really plainly, right? You can't be everything for everybody. And so if you're really specific about who your audience is, and this again I think still applies to the personal focus working inside of a company or the single person firm owner even, right? It's like, I think it applies, right? Who are you? What do you stand for? And like, what are the outcomes that you care about? And then crafting that really simple pitch so that people know whether they align with that or not.
Yeah, and if you have strong positioning, your close rate should be 80, 90% because you're never going to be in a position where you're doing proposals that
for no
aren't
reason.
Kind of a good fit, that they aren't already, like the concept is like they're agreed on principle before you actually get to like pricing and all of those pieces of it, because they are actively wanting to work with you or your firm. And that's the other part of niching, is that it makes it from a marketing perspective that you've got to really focus like, okay, here's the 500 clients that we want to work with. It's completely possible to, just boots on the ground, make sure that all 500 of them know who you are. And if you can know that, like, mix that with your point of view that, clearly speaks to that audience, then that's what can really get you into that expert position. It's not about being, LinkedIn influencer famous or whatever, but if you can get all 500 of those businesses to think of you as an expert in that space, then you're going to be winning. And that's the other side that niching and positioning helps you with, is your focus on that side of things.
Do you have like a framework of how to do that? Like what I've used in the past is this idea of like a persona or multiple personas. Like you're not just really identifying who your target audience is, but you give them a name and they have a job. Here's what they do when they wake up in the morning. Here's what they do throughout the day. Here's what they do before they go to bed. And the reason you go through that exercise is so that you then look at everything you produce or want to produce, think you want to produce, let's put it that way, and then say, like, does Jennifer actually care about that, right? Yeah. From a person, like, who is this person? Can we be in her shoes to figure out if she would be interested in this? Do you guys use a framework like that, or is that old? Is that an old way to do it? What do you think?
Like, it's definitely conceptually like the right thing. I personally don't do like full-fledged personas because I feel like we get too focused on the demographic side of that. So that's like age and things like that. Where I focus much more is the psychographic side in terms of like, what's their values? What do they care about? What's the problem that they are being kept awake at night about? And that's what I want to have a really clear sense of for my customers. So when I say like we focus on small teams and complex industries, there's two sides to that. The small team side of it, that there's a lot that comes with being a small marketing team and all of the different hats that you're wearing. So we have a really strong understanding of what it means to be a solo or 3-person marketing team. The complex industry side of it is we know the struggles that marketing teams have in trying to like defend their budgets to leadership. We know how hard it can be to explain just what your product is and all of those things, or to track, you know, how money's actually moving and what actually moves the needle. So that's where I focus a lot more. But, you know, starting as simple as like a job title or a vertical can be really useful. So AEC firm that I worked with in the past, they just happened to have some engineers on staff that were like experts in refrigeration for grocery stores.
So that earlier example, it was a real example.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's something that, you know, there's only so many people in the world that care about refrigeration for grocery stores.
Say that care, yes.
Yeah, but
and we're glad they do.
Like, yeah, but it still can be pretty good business if you can make sure that everyone that does care about refrigeration in grocery stores knows who you are. That can be a pretty good part of your practice. So it's those types of things. And then once you get into that, you know, they're going to have specific pains. They're going to have specific things that they run into that most firms that they talk to don't understand. So your ability to talk their language to address those pains, that's going to be your strongest selling point in a lot of ways.
Yeah. The words come up several times now. It's sales, right? And I think for a lot of architects, that feels like a dirty word. And I'm just curious your perspective on that, because I don't see it that way. I see it as like, yeah, this is what designers do. This is what architects have to do.
Yep.
You need to sell. And again, maybe people feel like used car salesman kind of around that, but I don't feel like that at all. Like the world is sales, communication is sales, and positioning is sales. So I'm curious, from you're nodding already, but just go ahead and tell me what you think about that word, and or if there are alternative words that people may accept more.
So there's two sides to it, I think. There's one is kind of the outbound side of things, and I think on that side, you just have to get comfortable with the idea that you're going out to sell something, but part of your goal should be that like the people you're reaching out to aren't feeling it as you're trying to sell to them, because it really is about building relationships, and it's about getting to know them, provide value to them, all of that, just so that they come to you when the time is right. Once you're in kind of the process, I think that there's nothing dirty about sales, because what you need to just keep in mind is that you are providing them value that, like, if you believe that you can actually help them, then you're doing them a favor by leading them through the process in the way that you believe works best. That, if you're generally, like, I guess, obviously some people in AEC sell to homeowners or whatever, but generally it's two businesses that are working with each other.
Yeah.
And businesses know they need to spend money, so there's nothing like kind of taboo about that conversation that a lot of people are scared to talk about the money or anything like that. But it's just, if you come at it from a place of, you have a problem, I think I'm well positioned to help you with that problem, and through this process I just want to make sure that you get what you need out of this. And that's like a ton of when I'm doing like kind of qualifying conversations with potential clients, like and it comes back to the positioning, all of that. A good handful of them, I tell them, like, we're probably not the right fit for you because either the budget's not right or what you're looking for isn't right. And my goal is really just to help them. But if the thing that's going to help them is, working with us is your best fit, then I'm not, take no shame in that of, I want to do good work for you.
Like you said, you're delivering value. And to me, like that, what that ultimately means is what you're giving to them is at least equal to what you're charging, if not worth more, right?
Yep.
Than them going somewhere else to get it or doing it themselves or whatever, right? And so I think a lot of times, I think professionals really know this. I don't know if architects really know this, even though they're technically professionals. But it's like the value of hiring, because architects like to do a lot of stuff ourselves, right? Like, we can do that. We don't need to hire somebody to build that website or build this intranet or do the marketing or whatever the thing may be, right? I feel like because we're up for a lot of challenges and we know how to work hard, but it's like when you're hiring somebody to do something, it's because it's worth it, right? And
exactly.
And that to me is what we need to understand about ourselves, is not that just they have to hire an architect because we can stamp the drawings because it's required by law, but it's way better than that, right? And so this ties back into that idea of like understanding your audience too, right? And niching down, because then you're having a value conversation with those individuals about whether they're going to hire you to provide these services and products, right? So to me, like it all plays into you doing the work that you want to be doing and getting paid handsomely for it, so that there is a vitality to this profession, to your business, that is a success overall. Like I feel like there's not enough talk about that in this kind of race to the bottom with fees and undercharging and doing things more efficiently so that we can do more projects. Like all that to me sounds like spending more time doing stuff we don't like, that we like, number one, isn't the highest value, but we don't like doing it. Like and doing stuff that you hate is like literally killing you. Right? It's literally destructive to your life force when you're doing those things. And so when it comes to like understanding that people can actually value what you provide and you can charge more for it because you're giving them a higher value than what it takes to actually do it. And like that relationship gets better throughout that process. There's a lot going on here that's way more than just like what the price tag is.
Yeah. And all of that goes back to the marketing and positioning and all of those pieces as well, because what you're doing when you do that well is you're making it so that people are coming into that sales conversation already understanding the value that you specifically bring that other firms don't. So they're already kind of ready for, this is going to cost more than other people, but I'm having this conversation with you because you do this thing that I really value. So it's worth it to me.
And it's not even like a thing. It's like, it's you. It's personal. And to me, like getting back to like building relationships, it's anything that you can do to show people who you are, how you think, why you care about these things, is that positioning part. It's also, it's like this podcast, like people tune into my ArchiSpeak podcast for 13 years because I'm a character in their life, right? Because they've tuned in to listen to Cormac and I talk about things over over a decade, right? As crazy as that sounds to me, but it's a relationship, and it may not be like a personal relationship, but it is a relationship, and I think that that's such a powerful thing to understand that you could do that, and people can pick you out of a lineup because they have heard your voice.
Yep.
And they already know that they want to do work with you. They already know because they've heard you say something else, because they aligned with something that you said before, or they were challenged by something that you said before. It doesn't have to perfectly align, right? It could just be like, okay, there's this open-mindedness to it, and the challenge was like, oh, that challenged me to think differently about something, or to have a different purpose, or whatever it would be. I think that all of that is incredible, and it leads to you doing the kind of work that you want to be doing because people know who you are. There was a firm that I interviewed with back in the day, a long time ago, and it was like, okay, well, I'm a technologist, right? I'm an internet user, which is, it's like, it sounds so silly to say, right? But it was like, this was back in the 90s, right? And it was like, well, okay, I'm going to search for who these people are at this firm. And like literally nothing came up, nothing at all. And it's like, so if nobody can find you, how are they going to have any sense of who you are, and listen to what you have to say and believe it, right? Because there's no consensus out there. There's nothing to even go off of. And like you said earlier, people have already done. You have no idea what they've already done before they come to you, research wise, search wise. Like how many times have you gone and you know more about the product than the salesperson does, right? It's like all the time, right? This is how people operate, and so it's also it's not different
one
in this
thing
context.
That's important there too is understanding a lot of times they're doing that research on other sites, on YouTube, on things you have no control over. So like the pieces that people are actually looking at before they're making those decisions, you rarely actually have any control over them anyway. So all you can try to control is the things people are saying about you elsewhere.
Yeah. Hey everyone, let's take a quick break from the conversation to pay some bills around here. This episode of TRXL is brought to you by TRXL Plus members. That's right, my incredible paid supporter members are making this episode possible. Their direct support ensures that I can continue exploring the intersection of architecture, technology, and the future of design with the leading voices in our industry directly to you. So let's talk about why you might consider financially supporting the podcast too. By becoming a TRXL Plus supporter, you're not just helping sustain these conversations, you're also gaining exclusive benefits like ad-free episodes of the show and my Leadership Edge email newsletter, where I analyze episodes and deliver the insights and key takeaways right into your inbox. Your small contribution makes a huge impact. And if you've been enjoying TRXL and want to be part of the community that keeps it thriving, please consider joining today. Head on over to trxl.co and click the subscribe button either in the upper right-hand corner or at the bottom of the page, or you can visit a link that I've put into the show notes. Once again, my sincerest thanks to the TRXL Plus members who have made this episode of the podcast possible, even though they aren't even hearing this ad because theirs are ad-free. Now, let's get back to the conversation. I'm curious if you have good examples of, I don't know, like if we can keep it in the domain of architecture, but maybe we can go outside of it. It doesn't matter to me actually, of people who are doing this well, brands that are doing this well. What you're talking about?
I can't think off the top of my head of any firms that I would like point to.
A damning statement, Kyle.
Yeah. And I will be fair that I don't pay a ton of attention to it, but that kind of goes back to, if we're talking about LinkedIn, for instance, like I wouldn't really recommend to any firm to regularly post to their LinkedIn page. Like, maybe post once a month just so that if somebody's looking, they know that you still exist. Like the importance of LinkedIn is going to be much more like your subject matter experts and things like that out there.
People.
Yeah, people. Exactly.
Personal accounts.
So, so there's a lot of people out in the world that are doing this well, that are out there making name for themselves, and that comes across to their business that they're attached to. But like I'll give you one example that's from my background is actually as a programmer. I've been building websites since I was like 8. So that's where I kind of started all of this.
There were no websites when I was 8, Kyle.
Well, it was like Angel Fire and GeoCities when I was 8. So
all right.
I'm not that young. But there's a really great example of this in the kind of web development space, that there's a company, I won't even say the name of the company because they don't deserve it at this point, but there is a company, they build like a database as a service, right? So it's like one of the most boring kind of concepts, like even people that are super nerds aren't going to care about their database as a service. But they hired a great guy called Aaron Francis to run their YouTube channel. And he was able to build this into this like really successful channel that was all about databases. So like one of his most popular videos was like somebody was tweeting about the company and how they were having like a problem with a slow query. So he reached out to him on Twitter and made a whole video about like helping him troubleshoot this problem, and then like kind of showing that actually it was user error and not a problem with the product and all these things, and just doing it in this really personable way. Eventually this company that's like, VC backed everything decided, hey, actually, we aren't getting any ROI from this YouTube channel, even though you're getting millions of views. We don't believe that CTOs that are who we sell to are watching YouTube. So they fired Aaron and his kind of team there and shut down the YouTube channel. That company's not doing great these days, but Aaron's doing amazing because he's been able to kind of sell, hey, actually people do buy based on YouTube in this space, because the people that are watching are the developers and everything making the decisions and telling their CTOs, this is what you should be looking at. That it's an understanding of how that sale is actually made that the VC-backed company kind of wasn't willing to understand. That's the type of thing that AEC firms could really learn from, is just like most people would never think that having a successful YouTube channel is going to help your AEC firm, that if you're not like just talking about yourself for something like that. But,
right.
You could create a channel like, I watch a ton of YouTube channels just around like, history of architecture, interesting concepts within it. Like, you could easily create a channel on that would have, massive ROI for a AEC firm, if you're able to kind of take the jumps that it takes to understand how that would actually drive business. That it's not about somebody watching a video and then reaching out to you. It's about that long-term play on it. So,
man, like I talked to earlier about how I started going off onto YouTube, and I didn't even ask for permission to do that, but it was obvious to me that my future staff members were going to see what we did there and want to be a part of it. So if you go back on my YouTube channel, you will see my digital practice videos that I made, and they were very vlog style, and they were very like me talking to you. It was like I had defined who my audience was, and I was speaking to a person that represented that audience, and the things that I was talking to them about were where we were headed as a digital practice. And to me, maybe you can't do that anymore, especially in a larger firm, right? There's so much red tape around this kind of stuff. Smaller firms can definitely leverage this. And so I'm just curious, maybe start to wrap up here, but the idea of firms not leveraging individuals who are willing to put themselves out there. I mean, there is a vulnerability aspect to it.
Yeah.
It's like not easy for people to sit in front of a camera and talk to it like we're doing here, and get ideas across. But the only way you get better at it is by doing it, right? And so you, again, it goes back to that preciousness aspect of it as well. Like they don't need to be perfect. You just need to make it a practice, because practice eventually, maybe it won't make it perfect, but it makes it something that you can do, and it starts to weave, this rug that we all use that ties all the rooms together, right? But it's like one of these things where you don't, I didn't ask for permission to do it. And like I said, maybe in a big firm you can't do that, but it's one of those things where it can make a huge difference. And a lot of firms, because they have so many committees and red tape and all these things, and they can't like let some person be a quote unquote star or misrepresent them by saying the wrong word at some point or whatever. Like they're leaving a lot on the table, and like it always kind of blows my mind that there's serious rock stars working at these firms, and you wouldn't know it because and so like going back to this idea of personal LinkedIn pages versus brand LinkedIn pages, and which ones like personalities and people are a lot of the reason why people get hired to do things is because they want to work with you, right?
Yep.
They want to work with that person on a project. And I think a lot of brands are companies are leaving that leverage where it's like they won't even use it.
Yeah, and I think there's an understandable level of risk that firms are scared of, because if you're really investing in a employee of yours on them kind of building their own personal brand, the fear is then if they leave, they take that with them, right? And that's like, the database company I was talking about, that was exactly what happened, is that they invested in somebody that built up a great kind of following, and then when he was gone, that went with him.
But they didn't. But they fired him.
Yeah, it was their choice. Exactly.
Right.
And I think that that's what it comes down to, is that the pros way outweigh the cons, and the things that kind of mitigate against it is being a good place to work for and taking care of your employees in that way. Because even if they leave, if they're leaving on good terms, that's not going to damage your brand at all. Where firing them, if they were really somebody that was drawing an audience, is obviously going to impact you negatively. So it's kind of like there's only upsides if you treat them well, essentially, that it might be a short-term investment or what have you, but it's still going to be worth it while it's happening.
Yeah, you think about how there's a lot of times where firms will invest a lot of training into people, whether it's an app like Revit or whatever, and those people leave. Like, was that a bad thing to invest so much into them so that they learned the right way to do the things? Like, not really. They went somewhere else, and they're going to take good habits to another place, and that's going to actually help the profession. It's not so much about us. It's about we, right? Like the bigger picture, again, that benefited from your investment into that person. And if you can't figure out how to keep them there, like that's something you should also be looking at, right? Is like figuring out ways to keep those people happy who are truly like a magnifying glass for business development or marketing or promotion or storytelling, whatever those things may be. There's a lot of analogies that you could use there that I think, like, a lot of times people will look at it this one particular way, which is like, oh, that it's so risky to give that person a voice. And again, kind of going back to this idea that everybody's a media company, like if you have people who are willing to do it and you're not allowing them to do it, of course, like work with them. Of course, like set out guidelines and set out like goals and all of those things, but don't like completely smash it, because they'll just go somewhere else where they can do it, right? Like people who want to do this stuff are going to do it.
And what I would recommend too, because I feel like people come into this in kind of two states of mind. One is either they're just against it entirely, or the other one is like, we need to be on all of these different channels, or we need to have a blog, a
All
YouTube,
of
a
it.
TikTok, all of it.
Yeah.
But what I would do is just look inside your firm, see where your talent is. And if you see somebody that seems like they could really excel in an area if you gave them the chance, whether that, like I wouldn't put much stock in an AEC firm's TikTok channel. But if you've got somebody that can create TikTok content that gets millions of views around your AEC firm, I would let them do it all day. Like that's going to be a unique spin that you can really take advantage of.
Right.
Likewise, if they're a great writer or just great at building relationships on LinkedIn or whatever, looking to kind of that talent first is where I would focus on.
You're bringing to mind like this idea of, again, like where your future clients are, and future clients could be in 2 years, it could be in 20 years. Like the speed at which firms move through projects is not fast, right? So you kind of do have to do a lot of different things because your 20 years from now customers are in a different place than your tomorrow customers, right? So if you think about who's buying buildings or these services that design, like sometimes the right answer, well, it's like there's multiple categories. The right answer is email, and it is Facebook, and it is Instagram, and it is TikTok, because those are different audiences, and you actually need to, but you don't put the same content on all those things, right? You are specifically kind of identifying who those audience members are, and you're talking to them in those channels, if you could do all those things.
Yeah, and the key is that you're not doing all of those things just because you're supposed to be on those places. I talked earlier about how there's two things that I recommend everyone have. The first being ambition. The second is what I call like a theory of your marketing, which is having a really clear, like kind of just path of like, if we do this with these types of people, we think eventually this will happen. So an example of that is, so we work with a firm that is essentially tourism, right? And there's like two campaigns on the digital side that work together. One is a YouTube campaign, which is just video ads at the front so this is an Idaho focused where we live campaign. And it's highlighting like there's great skiing, great mountain biking, great rafting, all of these things in Idaho. And the only metric that we're doing for that is, can we see an increase in the amount of Google searches for mountain biking in Idaho, things like that over time? Then when you search for mountain biking in Idaho, we have an ad there that brings them to our client's site related to that content. So those two things work together, but it's with the understanding that, travel is a decision that's made over years, that people hear about a potential place that they want to travel to, and then that goes in kind of their bucket list, but they might not actually plan to visit there for 5 years or whatever. So the first step is getting them into that consideration step. And then as they're doing that research phase, then we want them to come to our client site, which brings them to a specific part of Idaho. That's the goal, right? Yeah. So there's two sides to that, but then it's understanding, the YouTube videos that we target, it's a very specific like type of person that's kind of like an adventure seeking 30-something-year-old with disposable income. So they're watching videos about mountain biking and, knowing how expensive those are and all of that. We kind of have an idea of the type of person that is. Yeah. So big picture, it's about kind of that overarching like piece, that it's not about just being on every channel. It's about understanding like with our overall theory of what we're trying to make happen, what are the channels that really matter in that?
And how long of a time span is that arc that you see doing that, running that experiment for to start getting some data in that you could actually analyze?
Yeah, so we're really looking at like on the like YouTube side. So we're not measuring like the YouTube ads at all because there's not really anything to measure on that, right? Like they are 15 seconds ads, you watch them, there's like, we don't expect anyone to click through or anything like that. We just want to lay that groundwork. And then it's more over like, 6 months to a year, we're measuring, can we see a lift? Like, is this something that is getting people to search for these terms? And we're not even going to try to say that there's like a 1-to-1 that our ads are definitely what's causing that, but it's just like, what we know is that when we spend money on YouTube around these topics, we see an increase in the amount of people searching these terms on Google. And that's kind of where it comes back to that theory, right? Like, we can never prove that really. There's not really other metrics that matter to it. It's more of like that makes like a kitchen table logic. So then we're going to see what we can measure within that space. So we call them like indicator metrics, that it's not the thing. The thing we're trying to make happen is actually people considering and researching traveling to Idaho. But this is an indicator of how well we're able to kind of influence that.
Interesting. And can you put a ballpark number on what it takes to do something like that?
It's like what you get there when it comes to like something like ad spend is that first you just want to have like what you have a ballpark number of is how much does it cost to get in front of 1,000 people in this space, right? So then that's where you can start to kind of measure like, when we get in front of 100,000 people, this is the lift we see. If we doubled that, you would expect to see kind of around double that lift. If you don't, then you're reaching probably like diminishing returns on that it's getting more expensive to show those ads to people than the kind of result you get from it. So that's the type of measurement you can do, but it's also just when kind of how much it costs to run YouTube ads, you get kind of a good sense for it over time. So that's where it comes back to kind of having experts in those spaces can really help on some of these types of things.
Social media, it's interesting because I think there's a kind of an allergy, maybe, I don't know if this is just personally, like my age demographic or my profession demographic or if it's an industry demographic, but there's this allergy to, like I said earlier, like this allergy to the word sales, but also advertising, right? And like AEC, like we talked about marketing being kind of just reactive to RFPs and not like proactive marketing and positioning and direct mailers, or I don't know what, there's a lot of ways you could start to shift, where your eyeballs are coming from. If you're a small firm, right? Like when's the last time a small firm sent out mailers to an age and a income demographic in some targeted area that says, hey, I do high-end bathroom remodels. Like I specialize in them, specifically niche down, right? How many people are considering doing that? Well, probably quite a few, right? It's a big value raise for the home, especially if people have lived there for a long time, they're going to need to, like it's repeat work. It's a cool design problem every time you do it, potentially. How often are people doing that? Probably not very much, right? They're just waiting for someone to call them based on some, low-ranking Google search because they're not doing Google ads or anything. I think there's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruit when it comes to this kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing when it comes to advertising, that, again, it comes back to that kind of positioning and value, that if you have nailed that positioning, you're going to be getting in front of people that actively have the problem that you're trying to solve, and they're going to actually value seeing a potential solution for it. If you're in that bathroom remodel place, like if you're finding the right targeting of the type of people that actually want to remodel their bathroom. And, it's also fine, like when you're kind of looking at ad spends or things like that, you actually don't want to get hyper targeted. You just want to make sure that everyone that you want to reach is kind of within that. So it's fine if, if you're sending out 10,000 mailers or whatever, if only 500 of them are the people you're trying to reach, it's fine that the other 9,500 see that or whatever. It's not a waste of money. It's just
Yeah.
what it takes to get in front of those 500.
Yeah.
But those 500, they're the ones you care about, and they're going to be like, yes, this is exactly what I was looking for.
Right. I'm curious what you think about, okay, so going back to this idea of brand versus, or company versus personal LinkedIn pages, boosting posts. What if somebody works for a company, they're putting up something that could potentially start to tell the story about attracting, future team members. What about boosting those kinds of posts for, $10 a day for 7 days and seeing what those numbers bring back?
So are you talking about Facebook specifically?
LinkedIn, LinkedIn,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a few things to it that depend on the platform, but in general, like, I think that paid social media is going to always perform better than organic social media, and there's a lot of reasons
I can
for
tell
it.
you, like, I totally agree. I read something recently, like somewhere between 1% and 3% of people who quote unquote follow you or are your connections on LinkedIn, a professional social media, the quote, air quotes, there. But this idea that between 1% and 3% of your following is actually going to see your posts, I mean,
Yep.
it's built around what we're talking about right now, right? Which is
Yeah.
boosting posts.
And what it comes down to, and this is like something that's really important for any marketer that's getting into any sort of like digital ads, anything to understand, is that the way that the giant media conglomerates make their money is something you need to be fully aware of anytime you're doing something on their platforms.
Yeah.
That Facebook makes their money through the ad, so they're very incentivized to not show your posts.
Right.
LinkedIn, kind of similarly, is really focused on trying to kind of build up the platform as this relationship thing. So there's been studies that show that, like, I think personal pages are something like 4 or 5 times more likely to have their post shown than like business pages.
Yeah.
Like, I follow very few businesses on LinkedIn for that reason, but you almost never see them in your feed. And that's just what the incentives are for both of those. So it is kind of pay to play, really, if you're a business. So I would say, that I wouldn't spend a lot of time or effort on organic for the business page on either side of that. On Facebook, if you think your audience is on Facebook, then it can be worth looking at paying some money to get in front of that audience. On LinkedIn, I think that it's way more about, like, you're way more likely to get a showing of a good personal post on one of your employees that have something interesting to say than anything you pay for.
And that's the reason I bring it up, is I think companies could be boosting people who work for them, who are posting things that could add to their brand, but then they're footing the bill, but because that's a really effective strategy to get things out in front of people.
And there's actually a new ad placement from LinkedIn to get very, on the executional side, that allows for businesses to boost personal posts.
Oh, interesting.
So it shows up as like, the name of the person, but then it says like architect or whatever at blank firm sponsored by the firm.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to kind of, if you want to start kind of boosting the profiles to kind of kickstart the organic side of it, that might get them some followers that can then lead to more organic growth for them.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people are probably thinking, this feels gross. But I'll just say, like, this is a game. And you play the game or you don't play the game. And so what the angle I'm coming at this from is, like, playing this game so to work to your advantage. And there is something to be said for social media platforms knowing their audience. Like, they know more about you than you probably know about you. Then your close relationships know about you. And they are very, very effective for targeted advertising. And like, the reason I prefaced this whole section of the show around an allergy to this kind of thing. Like, we kind of have to get over that. I think if you really want to be known, and that's all I'm just saying, is like there is value in being known, right? Going back to
Yep.
the whole premise of this episode with marketing is just being known for
Yep.
whatever it is. And so these are really, 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 I think, effective ways to do that, and using these tools for what they are absolutely built for. You think Facebook is meant to get you to connect with your family? It is absolutely not. Like, that's where it started, but that was in service to building what it has become, right? And so, I mean, Kyle, you're the expert here, but what do you think about what I just said?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And if you feel gross about it, it comes back down to like if you're the business you're doing, if you think that it matters, if you think that you're, bettering the world through the work that your firm is doing, and you're not being, unethical or lying or whatever in your advertising, then, that's what it takes for your firm to win and do more of the work that you want to do that you think is bettering the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be kind of afraid to get in and play the game, as you said, if the like even if it feels, because like it's not, I don't think anybody has a problem with it from like an ethical sense. It's almost more from like a brand sense or something, that it's like if I'm out in the world actively looking for business or something, that reflects poorly on us. But
Mm-hmm.
that's why it really comes down to like that value side of it, that uh you know clients can smell a desperation if you're coming into something like desperate to get them to come to you. But if you're going out and providing value and just knowing like, hey, eventually this will come back for us, then that's just a win-win for everybody on it.
Yeah. Well, Kyle Morck, thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. The company is Reynolds and Myers. Is that right? Did I say it in the
That's
right
right.
order?
Yes.
Sometimes I think about it in the opposite order. Reynolds and Myers. And I mean, I'm just going to pitch TRXL Podcast right now as a great place for AEC and technology companies to get in front of an audience of people who care. And I think Reynolds and
Yes.
Myers is also in the same boat. Like, if you like what you're hearing from Kyle and you like what you're hearing here on the podcast, reach out to us. I mean, and should we be ashamed to say this? I don't think so. Like, this is
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about. And we've worked hard to get to this point. And I really appreciate you coming on the show to talk about this subject. I know more about it than I probably should know, but at the same time, like, I don't know. There's so much that I don't know. So I'm
Yeah.
really happy to have you come on the show and share.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. And I think to the point you just made, that's part of it, is that uh, the world makes marketing seem way more complex than it actually is or should be. So a lot of people like feel like you that there's a lot you don't know. And I think that's a big part of what I try to do in the world, is just help, guide them in the right direction and let them know actually it can be simpler than it's been made out to be. So, but that said, I'm happy. Anyone who wants to reach out and chat, I'm always happy to help them through their marketing and just help set them in that right direction. So please feel free.
Yeah, there's a lot of architects who are going to take this on themselves because that's what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to the point that we talked about earlier in the podcast, like, reach out to an expert who knows what it saves so much time. It saves so much pain of learning that whole craft from scratch,
Yeah.
and not having the time to do it, and all that stuff that comes along with any of these really specialized roles. Like, you bring a lot to the table, right? Like, and that to me is really where the value is, and I'm willing to pay for that kind of a value if I can to get somebody that is a literal shortcut to
Yeah.
something else.
And even for me, even if there's no potential work from it, if a 30-minute call can help somebody from, wasting a bunch of money going in the wrong direction or chasing after shiny objects, then, that's a value I want to provide to the world regardless. So
Yeah.
always happy to do it.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll have links to Kyle and Reynolds and Myers in the show notes for this podcast, among many other links and things based on what we talked about today. And until next time, Kyle, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to our members this week. Find out how you can become a member at trxl.co, and I'll talk to you again next week.